Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my review for Slender Man. And what Slender Man is essentially about is basically we center on these four best friends, and they are basically just doing their normal thing. They're having a sleepover one day, and they stumble across this video where basically if you watch this video, it's kind of like the Ring situation where you're kind of on borrowed time, and there's this creature, Slender Man, that can get into your head, and not really thinking anything of it, they start to watch the video, and from there, Slender Man does start to manipulate them, friends start disappearing, tons of weird stuff start happening, and the friends very quickly start to lose their minds completely, and that's really all there is to say. So Slender Man in general, I wouldn't say I was necessarily dreading it, but I just was never really for the idea of them doing a Slender Man movie. When it was first announced, I was like, hell yeah, let's do one. You know, I've heard so many myths about Slender Man and things like that, and I remember in like middle school and things like that, people talking about it, but that was years ago. And now in 2018, I just don't really hear people talk about Slender Man anymore, at least not as extensively as they used to do, say, like 5 to 10 years ago. That just didn't really happen, at least for me. It could be different for some people, but at least for me, I might hear about Slender Man in passing and things like that, but I don't really hear people talk a great deal about it like they did a few years ago. So the fact that we were getting this movie, to me, it just felt a bit weird. The timing especially, it just did not really make sense. I didn't really think this needed to come out. And to be honest, this is honestly worse than I really could have thought it was. Slender Man is probably one of the laziest horror films I have seen in a very long time. There's a lot of things this movie does do wrong, but there's a lot of things that this movie could have actually done right. It's probably one of the most frustrating horror films I've seen all year, and we're going to get into that right now, starting off with the cast. And I'm going to be honest, the acting here actually isn't that bad at first, and that's mainly due to the four girls, who I actually do think did have some solid chemistry. All of them, Joey King, Juliana Goldani, Tellis, the other girl who I can't think of right now, and Annalise Basso, I did actually thought had solid chemistry. I did actually think they worked pretty well together. They seem like normal girls overall. Unfortunately, a lot of that chemistry started to fade away, not just because the group does get separated, but once these guys started acting crazy and started acting a little bit erratic, that's when things started to go a bit more down south for me. Joey King especially, I thought was very unconvincing in scenes where she was supposed to be scared or paranoid about what was happening. It just felt really over the top, and I just really did not believe it. Same with Julia Goldani Tellis. I remember seeing her in The Affair a few years ago, and she was one of the lesser parts of that show for me. And once again here, she's really not that great. I think, like I said, she started off and I liked her, but as the film does go on, I thought she just got way too over the top. It was very unbelievable. And then the other two girls, I can't really say much about because we don't really see them a lot. But the four girls overall, I didn't think were like the worst thing ever. It was just as the film went on, I thought they did actually get quite annoying in that regard. Rest of the cast overall, not really much to say. I will say, the girl that plays Hallie's sister, Taylor Richardson, I thought was honestly pretty bad here. I really was not a fan of her at all. Javier Botet, I guess, did a good job as Slender Man. He really did not have much to do in this film. We'll get to that in a little bit, but just in general, I thought the cast here was all right. There was one actor in here that kind of was like a guilty pleasure role for me, but he's literally only in one scene. It's the father of Katie, the first girl that disappears. His character I thought was actually a lot of fun at first, but again, we only see him in that one scene, and that's really kind of it. But other than that, there's really not much else to say in the acting department. But now we do have to get to the thing that really pissed me off the most about this movie, which is the directing and, of course, the writing, which the directing in this film is really bad. I really did not like the directing at all here. It is incredibly forced, and my biggest problem with the directing is that it doesn't really seem like this movie has a set tone. At points, the movie does try to delve into psychological horror. Then sometimes it tries to be, you know, a classic sort of like creature feature. Then sometimes it tries to be a slasher, but not really much of a slasher because it's only PG-13, so they can't really do that. And then sometimes it just tries to be like a drama, and it just does not really have that much of a focus. And I think that the tone in general, the directing just felt very half-assed in that way. And I feel like if you got someone like, say, James Wan or someone like that, he really could have put a lot of effort into the directing, because I did see potential here for some really unnerving stuff, but the directing here just felt so half-assed in that way, and it just really did not seem like there was much passion put into this at all, and it just did not really seem like they knew what they wanted this to be. And the same goes for the writing here, which the writing easily is the thing that annoyed me the most about this movie, because like I said, for the first like 20 to 30 minutes, I actually wasn't hating this film. I actually was like, this actually is not that bad. I don't really see why people are hating it all that much. Like I said, I thought the four girls did work well together. Their introduction, they just felt like normal high school girls. You know, I did think that they did a good job with setting up some of the girls' disappearance and things like that. And I do think the film actually did a pretty solid job of setting up who Slender Man really is and the things that he can do to you. Joey King's character, for example, you know, she does a lot of research into what's actually going on. And they talk about the psychological effect that Slender Man can have on all of them, and that he can get into their heads. And for each person, you know, it will have a different effect on them and things like that. And it'll mess with their minds. And they compared it to like a virus in a computer. I'm like, all right, this is actually really cool. I really want to see where they take it. And then they don't go anywhere with it. Like, literally, the rest of the film is just the two girls, because the other two girls disappear very early on. This is not a spoiler. It's literally the plot of the movie. We mainly spend time with these two girls, and these two girls, not only are they really bland, but the whole thing of a different effect happening to all of them does not happen in this movie. First of all, just the characters in general, especially our main two here, Hallie and Ren, are so uninteresting. The most we get with Hallie's character is that she likes this guy, and her sister, I guess, like, comforts her or whatever, and there's really not much else there. There's really nothing to her at all. Ren, forget about it. There's really nothing to her. There's nothing to the other characters. There's really nothing in terms of character development there, and that actually really pissed me off, because I thought that the other girls disappearing could have made a lot of room to delve deeper into these characters, and you could have gotten a way for Slender Man to get into their head and to use something against them, but they just never really went there at all. And as the film went on, I started to get more and more disinterested, because the film relies heavily on just, just them seeing Slender Man and them being afraid that Slender Man's coming after them, and the film always feels like it's just beginning. Even when it's getting to its climax, it always feels like it's just beginning. It never is feeling like it really dives headfirst into the psychological trauma that Slender Man has on all of his victims. And that actually really pissed me off, I would say. Because like I said, I do think they did a pretty good job with saying that up. It also doesn't help that 90% of this movie is just just jump scares every 10 seconds. That's all this movie really is. It's just random jump scares. And look, there's some jump scares that are very effective. Annabelle Creation, for example, I thought utilized jump scares very well. Are they the most memorable scares in the world? No, but at least with those jump scares, they were not false. They were things that genuinely did freak me out. They were things that I saw and I was like, holy fuck, that's really scary. It was the imagery really that heightened that for me. Here, on the other hand, this is some of the laziest jump scares I've seen in a very long time. There's so many points where there'll be just a jump scare and, oh, it's just my friend, or, oh, there's actually nothing going on there, or, oh, there's just a dream. There's literally a scene in this movie where our main character, Hallie, because, yeah, Joey King is actually not the main character here. It's actually Hallie who's the main character. And again, that's also very confusing because she kind of starts off as such, and then it's like, no, but she wakes up, she has this like dream sequence of Slender Man like tying her up in like a tree or whatever, and like roots starting to sprout from her mouth, and then that's a dream. Okay, but then she wakes up and she lifts up her shirt to see that Slender Man is like protruding through her chest, and then it's another dream sequence, and I'm like, what? It just seems so lazy in that regard. I don't know why they had to do that, and it was just so dumb. Like, the movie relies on just very cheap jump scares, and there's nothing scary about it. There really is nothing scary about this entire film, and that really did piss me off. And again, this would not be a huge problem if we had some solid character development and something maybe to, you know, something that's just something to maybe get behind that. But there was absolutely nothing. The acting wasn't there. The scares definitely were not there at all. And I thought there was a lot of stuff they could have dived deeper into. I really wanted to get into that psychological trauma. But perhaps the biggest problem with this entire film is the inclusion of Slender Man. Throughout this entire film, despite the fact that we do see Slender Man here and there, he honestly really just feels like an afterthought and just an excuse to really give us just really lame jump scares. And look, is the origin of Slender Man kind of silly? Yes, but there have been reports of people who actually do believe in Slender Man. There was a story years ago of these two girls who actually believed in Slender Man, and so much so to the point where they stabbed this girl, I believe, like 12 times. Thank God she did survive, but they stabbed her like 12 times. They left her in like this hole, this like well or whatever. It's really fucked up, and the film never really gets into that. They never explain why Slender Man wants these four girls, what he's actually trying to do with them, what his initial plan is. We never get into any of that. It feels like the only reason the film really exists is so we can make this Slender Man type universe. And throughout the whole movie, I honestly was thinking, as boring as it probably would be, I would be much more interested in a Slender Man origin film. Who was Slender Man? Why did he do this? Why does he go after these victims? What is his reasoning for all this? We never know. So we're never really that fearful of Slender Man. We never really know what he's going to do to them. And again, they did set up some potentially interesting stuff, but they just never dive into it. And anytime it feels like we're getting to that climax, again, it would be a dream sequence, or it would be in their head, or it wouldn't happen. And when it eventually does, the climax of this movie is so lame. Like, I get what they were going for, but one, I didn't care about the characters. Two, it ends up being extremely predictable what ends up happening, and it just doesn't have any impact on you whatsoever. So like I said, writing is really bad. They really did not seem like they put any effort into this whatsoever, and that really pissed me off. But what about the cinematography in this movie? I will say the film does have a nice visual style to it. There's this really creepy, gloomy aesthetic that I did overall enjoy. A lot of times, though, the CGI is very obvious. I do think Slender Man a lot of times looked like a effect. And I don't really know what Javier Botet contributed, because in general, it really seemed like he just kind of had to stand there and just basically just wait for the CGI to come, because I don't really see what kind of motion capture work he really could have done here. I can't even really say if he was good or not in this movie, because I don't really know how much he contributed. So yeah, I don't think the cinematography is like the worst thing ever, but it's definitely not good. Like, it does look very cheap, and there's a lot of shots where they could have put a lot more effort into it, and that really did piss me off. The score is whatever. I didn't really care about it, and the editing in general is very choppy. The film, I think, is way too short overall. There's a lot more things we could have dived deeper into. And also, I forgot to say this, but the film, honestly, when you really think about it, what we're dealing with here, this is kind of an internet safety film. That's really what this entire film is trying to be. It's trying to get into the dangers of, like, what can happen to you on the internet if you delve too deep into stuff, and the viruses that can get on your computer. It's not subtle about it all. It's really dumb, and I really couldn't stand that at all. The characters are complete idiots at points. There's literally a scene where they're wearing blindfolds because, of course, if you look directly into Slender Man, he'll get into your head. And this girl literally just takes off her blindfold, runs into the woods, and then gets abducted by Slender Man. It's really dumb, honestly. It's like they really only did that just because the script said so. It didn't really seem like she needed to do that. There are a lot of scenes like that in this movie. Slender Man in general just feels like an afterthought. The scares are not there at all. There is not a single scene in here that even remotely frightened me. I wasn't even on the edge of my seat at points. I wasn't even really that interested in what was going on. There was some potential here and there, and I did see the chemistry between the four girls, but once they started to disappear and once we actually started to get into the heat of things, things got very boring very fast. I was really hoping that maybe they could give me a solid feature. Maybe this could actually be something really good, but it just proves how irrelevant Slender Man really is. Overall, I don't really see this movie holding up at all. I think this is one of the poorest excuses for a horror film I've seen in a very long time. My audience certainly seemed to agree. They didn't really seem like they were into it at all. And because of that, guys, I am going to give Slender Man a D. But overall, guys, in my review of Slender Man, let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall, left your thoughts in it. Like I said, nothing that I would at all recommend. I think this is definitely a film that you can for sure skip. I honestly would have skipped it if I didn't have, like, you know, A-List or Movie Pass or something like that. It is not a film you really need to see, but that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.